So that was an incredible, haunting, but very powerful film. And we're now so fortunate to be joined by the filmmakers, the filmmaker, director, Jenny Shi herself. Jenny, we saw you in that film as a very important character. Also joined by producers Brent Huffman, who is a documentarian and a filmmaker and a professor at Northwestern University, and Diane Quon, who is an Oscar-nominated documentarian who has also produced another documentary that is also powerful and worth checking out. I'm Mark Greenblatt, who I am the moderator, and so fortunate to be able to join this conversation with all of these very powerful documentarians today. I'm a reporter for the Scripps Washington Bureau and also the president of the Fund for Investigative Journalism. Let's start out with you, Jenny. This is quite a journey for you. You, as I understand it, began this whole project actually as a student in Brent's class at Northwestern. Is that right?
Yep.
Tell me about the beginning. What made you pick up the camera? And what made this story be the one that you thought might be worth following?
So Yingying went missing in the summer of 2017. And at that time, I was in Brent's class. I was in a documentary journalism class. And that was my last quarter at Northwestern to get my master's degree. So when Yingying went missing, when I first heard about her missing, I didn't think about making a film or even filming anything, nothing like that. Just like any other Chinese students who just trying to find her, spread the word. And basically I, upload the police flyers on my own social media, on Facebook and Twitter, and join other volunteers to see what I could do to help Ying to look for her. And later on, Ying's family, they traveled from China to the US, and there were more volunteers helping the family directly, delivering groceries to them and help them with translation, because apparently only the boyfriend spoke English and the rest of the family, they knew nothing about America. They didn't speak English at all. So I also went down to Champaign because Chicago is not far away from where Ying went missing, that university, only like 2 hours drive. So I went down to visit the family once in a while. And I saw so many people helping the family. And I thought like what I could do. I learned documentary journalism, and I had camera. I had a skill to shoot and to document what's gonna happen. So I thought maybe I can start filming things happening right now. So I first started filming like public events, and anything happened like around. So I didn't have access to the family, and I didn't really think about make a film about their journey. And I also met a volunteer who was a senior student at U of I. His name is Shiling Sun, and he later became the cinematographer and also the co-producer of the film. So basically, we worked together, started documenting what was going on campus. And then we came up with the idea with maybe we can start filming where Ying used to work, where she used to study, because that was something the family, they wanted to do. They can, bring back those footage and show it to their relatives in China. And then we pitched the idea to the family and they were okay with that. And again, we spent a lot of time with the family. And most of the time we were not filming. So we were just there helping the family as volunteers. But the more time we spent with them, the more we realized that maybe, we should tell a story about the family. Since there are a lot of news coverage on the case, on the crime, on the investigation, there were some, coverage on the family, but that was very different from what actually, they're feeling what actually they're feeling and who Ying was, nothing like that. So we thought we could tell a story that's very different and can be very powerful. So that's how we started. But to be honest, I didn't think about making a feature. Yeah.
Well, and I just wanted to ask you about that because, you can see the film progressing, and in the beginning you meet Yingying and you see, you connect with her. You connect and you see this is a bright, young, just energetic, vibrant, dedicated student, and you also get a sense of her youth and her just innocence in some ways, and just her future. And I think collectively, you really captured that so well. But at some point along the journey, you figure out there's something, this is big, and this has really got potential to really evolve. What was that moment for you?
I think it's more about like my own experience and the process exploring what Yingying's feeling looked like when she arrived in the U.S. Um, and the biggest, component of the film is her diary. So we really get to know like what her dream was and how she felt when she first landed in the US. And I resonated with her experience a lot. I came here as an international student just a year before she arrived in the US, and I had exactly the same feeling, feel isolated, and I'm always homesick, and also, sometimes I wanted to, basically seek help, but I don't really know like who I should talk to. And that's not alone. There are so many Chinese students in the US, and it's very common. Like Shilin, like I mentioned before, he was an international student. He also had like the same experience that getting to someone's car. So this could happen, to anyone, to any of us. And just think about, as a parent, I mean, as a children, as someone coming here, I can imagine if it happened to me, what my parents would react, and how their life could change. And for me, it's not Ying's story. It's also about the hundreds of thousands of Chinese students or any international student in the US, and that is huge. So I think at that point, I realized that, it's not a single story about someone, like about a foreigner killed in the US. It's much, much more than that.
And Brent, as the professor who sort of has this forum that allowed Jenny to really progress and capture this for all of us. What are you doing in your class? What are you doing to set up the inspiration that eventually allows Jenny to pick up that camera and spot this as something worth going after?
Oh boy, that's a great question. I think I should start by saying Jenny is a special student, so they're not like Jenny. So she's pretty incredible. But my big thing is verite, cinema verite storytelling, and telling emotional stories where we get really close to the subjects and we break stereotypes. So I think that was my big push for Jenny, and I think she did just an amazing job of gaining the trust of the family, really gaining the building rapport with them, and just getting this incredible access. When I first looked at some of Jenny's footage, and I'm, my wife's Chinese, my kids are half Chinese, but I felt like I was watching my own story. I felt right, like I was Yingying's mother, and I felt, what would I do if my daughter was missing or kidnapped? I cry every time I watch the film. It's incredibly powerful and raw. So Jenny picked an ambitious project, but I think she just did an incredible job here.
Diane, I'm wondering, I have to say, I was touched by so many moments in the film, from the diary to the moment with the bird that we all watched, that it was just, there's no
So
words.
powerful. Yeah.
And there was, surprising and terrible and dark twists at the end. How do you come up with the narrative? How do you piece this story together to allow it to unfold for all of us? Because it really did feel as if we were on the journey along with Jenny, along with the family.
Well, we had a wonderful editor, John Farbrother, who worked really closely with Jenny, and we, basically you take all the footage and try to create an assembly cut, which is a lot longer than a 90-minute cut, but it allows you to pick out all the best or most important scenes, and we had to cut out a lot. The challenge was we were editing, and we're trying to meet a deadline for a festival, but the trial didn't even happen yet. So we had to continue to keep editing with as much of the story as we thought while we're waiting for the trial to happen. And then new evidence would come out through the trial. So it would cause us to, start looking at other pieces to include. For instance, the whole idea of Brent being at counseling center. That was something that came out near the end. So it's like, how do we integrate all that information? One of the important things we do is we have work in progress screenings, which where we encourage other filmmakers or students or friends to watch the film, and we have Q&As together at that time. You could actually meet physically and really see how people, what resonates with people, what bothers people, what's confusing people, and that helps us hone the story too. It was really helpful. The first work in progress, made us really relook at the film in terms of the crime itself and how much to put in.
You mentioned the counseling center video, and that just hit me out of like a ton of bricks at the end of the movie. I did not see that coming, and I'm interested. I don't know who wants to take this, but when that came out, how did it come out? And at this point, all of you had been invested in everyone on a personal basis. You'd gotten to know them, you'd spent time with them, and then all of a sudden this video comes out where the suspect, who is the killer, has been on video with university counseling saying, I'm having thoughts of being that are similar to being a serial killer, and I'm actually planning.
He actually purchased items.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yes.
This is incredible. Tell me about how that video came out and what your experience was with it once you became aware of it.
I think we heard that there's a piece about the counseling center, something like that. I think several days. I can't really remember, but the actual video came out during the trial. But it's maybe several days right before the trial, we heard that the local reporters, they got court reports basically saying that the suspect went to visit the university counseling center and express his thoughts of hurting others, things like that. But we didn't really know what exactly he said and how the conversation, what was the conversation between the counseling center's employee and the perpetrator. So when it came out in the trial, so Shiling and I, we were sitting in the trial. We were shocked. At first, like we were really shocked, and basically listening to him describing his like fantasy and also like the crime he wanted to commit. And we actually cut a lot out of the film. He even talked about like he's looking to like serious killers and like who he really admires, things like that. So that was really wild and crazy and basically blew my mind. And I think my first reaction was shocked, and then I thought about the family, how they're going to react, because they were not aware of such things before the trial. And we did ask the family, like during the interview after the trial, they were very disappointed, and they were really, as well, they are really shocked that the universities didn't reveal that information to them. And I think for us, like in the film, even though we ended the film, with a beautiful picture, a bright image of Yingying, and we hint a little bit, like just, the text saying that, there are some updates on the civil lawsuit. So I would say like right now, the family, they were really disappointed by what the universities had done. And they actually tried to hold them accountable. They filed lawsuit, against the universities. One is a federal lawsuit, another one is the state lawsuit, but they lost both. So for them, they didn't really know what they're gonna do next. And we haven't really heard from universities. We did interview someone from the university. I think it was the vice chancellor. She's also in charge of the public affairs, but she declined to comment on the counseling center.
One of the other masterful things that that the three of you did collectively here was the decision to go to China, and the decision to continue to continue capturing what was happening with Yingying's mother and father, and the relationship and the stress that was building. That was hard to watch and raw. And I'm interested in how the decision was made to go to China, and what it was like to be there to see all of that unfold.
Yeah, I think our team at the very beginning, we knew that this was a story more than just a crime, an investigation and a court case. If we really want to know who Yingying was and really want to tell the story from the family's perspective, we had to go back to China to really see what their life looked like, especially to see how the loss of Yingying has really affected the family and everyone around her. So after the family went back to China, I also went back to China in 2018 and spent some time with them. I actually lived with them. They treated me like their own child. And I mean, for me, staying with them, I have mixed feelings. On the one hand, the mom, she actually, she was really happy to see me because she felt like someone is there, like around her daughter's age and it looks similar. She felt happy. But on the other hand, I feel like, like my existence basically kept reminding her that her daughter is gone forever and this is just someone else. So I really have a mixed feeling. And staying with them, because they really trusted me, trusted our crew, so they won't hide anything. They won't hide any feelings. I would say in the US, they try to basically keep calm, especially during the trial. They didn't really express any emotions in the courthouse. And the mom herself, she can't really control her emotions. So she decided to watch the trial in a separate room so she won't jeopardize the trial. But in China, that's the place where they came from. So they didn't have to hide anything. And for us, I think for the audience, it's really crucial to see, what their real life and who they really are. So, and again, because we want to make a film about Yingying and tell the story from the family's perspective, we really want to set up that story before we get into all the crime and investigation and the trial to prepare for that. And we can, after we setting that base, we can really understand how harmful it is and what kind of tragedy it is. And basically to see, what people, who are the people left behind this tragedy.
I think it was important also to kind of break stereotypes of the Chinese student, international student, that they're all rich, pay full tuition, and want to take the jobs of the U.S. Yingying, we wanted to show that she came from a poor family that put everything they had to send her, and that became clear when you were in the home of the family and understood what they had to give up to send Yingying to the United States.
And yeah, I was going to say, to me, the really raw moments where they're fighting or they're crying, or there's some brief happy moments, is sort of this complexity that we see. To me, those moments just make the family so much more relatable, and brings me closer to the family. And I also feel it shows that the loss of Yingying is something no one will ever get over. Like it's not like they return to China and life goes back to normal. It's something that's just with them, forever.
There's also, and as I experienced it on the journey, I was there and I was struck with watching the security film, of being able to piece together and watch the moment of the abduction, really, when it happened. And I'm interested in your experience as filmmakers who had invested in this story from before that came out. How do you integrate that into the film, into the story, once you see it come out, that the video is there of the moment of her disappearance, and eventually it comes out that the killer himself is attending these rallies, How talk to me about when in the filmmaking stage this information came out? How late was it in the game? And what did it emotionally, how did it hit all of you when you started to see with your very eyes what had happened and understand the details and the horrific nature of what actually went down?
So we learned that the FBI arrested the suspect, and also they released a report saying that they didn't believe Ying is still alive 3 weeks after her disappearance. So that was in the very early stage. I think at the time I was still trying to get access to the family or basically filming around the campus. But for us, basically a lot of us just couldn't believe it. And it's from it the nature of the case changed from a kidnapping, changed from like a missing person to murder, basically. And then there was a long time, no updates. So the family, they stayed in the US for 5 months in 2017. They are waiting for more updates in terms of the search, especially in terms of where Yingying was at that time. But they hear nothing and they heard nothing. So they decided to go back to China. And at that time, there was a date set for the trial, but it got delayed multiple times. And then the whole 2018, no major updates. And we didn't really know like what exactly happened to Yingying. And we didn't really know about, basically the crime like details. They all came out during the trial. So as a filmmaker who's filming, this is basically when and where we got all the information. But for audience, when we were like in post-production, when we piece together different things, we want the audience to stay with the family. So basically they're on the same page whenever the family got new information about the case. Because we don't want to really make it as an investigation piece or a true crime story. It's really about the family experience and a journey to discover, who Yingying was. So that's in post-production. We released some information in the first act of the film. Basically, that was exactly when we heard about, she was like picked up by someone, like disappeared, and we had that surveillance tape. And then the majority of the crime, it came out in the third act of the film, where the trial took place.
But I was going to say, in terms of the killer showing up at the rallies, Jenny, you could talk about this. You were filming at the rallies, and you were actually filming the killer, not knowing that the killer was in the crowd, in your footage. And then it was later, Jenny showed me some of the footage from the rally and was like, here's the killer sitting, a couple seats back in the crowd from us, which is totally, gives me sort of chills to say it, totally bizarre and surreal.
I'm interested, Diane, what are you hoping people come away from this with? It is, as Jenny said, this was not an intent to be a true crime film. This was, such a journey inside of a family that was tormented and challenged and didn't know what had happened to their daughter. And I can't imagine, I'm a father of a young girl myself, if this were me put into this position, the level of just how much it would ruin me. And I wonder what you're trying, because this was not a news story. This played out in the headlines and on TV and local news and national news and international news eventually. But this is a completely different experience. What were you aiming for in this film?
I think for me, most important was to humanize Yingying. I think so many true crime films really talk so much about the crime and the perpetrator. And then the most you see of the victim is maybe a postage stamp or the parents crying, and then that's about it. And meanwhile, you learn so much more about the perpetrator and the nitty-gritty details of the crime. And I think then we start forgetting that the victims are real people, and it really, so that we just don't look at these things as, oh, here's another one, here's another one. We realize that these are really, and usually the victim is a young woman. So I was really hoping that people come away appreciating who Yingying was, and that they'll look at these as victims differently as people versus a victim. The other thing is, it was really important to me that we try to break these stereotypes about international students. I'm an American-born Chinese, and I have to say that I even had perceptions about students coming over and what their goals are. And I really hope that we bring more understanding conversation about who they are and their importance of being in the United States, and how Jenny describes this really well about how it's a mutual benefit on a campus to have international students. I would say that if we can start that conversation and break those stereotypes, we'll accomplish a lot in what we hope this film will.
You know, just on that point, Diane, the diary, right? Like that was what a tremendous way to tell the story. You brought Yingying's voice back in her own words.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
When I first saw the diary, and so we were applying for a grant, and so we had to put together a scene. And one of the first scenes we put together, Jenny and Don, was the rain scene where she goes into a laundromat for help. And that's when we saw the diary put together with the voice, Jenny's voice. And I just remember, like Brent says, crying, thinking that it hit me, this is a real person, and how vulnerable she was, and yet how much she loved, just thought the best in people. And it really made me realize how powerful having these diaries, how lucky we were that the family and boyfriend entrusted Jenny and Shinlin with these really important materials like the diary. We also got videos and photos, and I feel we were very lucky to get that from the family.
Brent, I want to hear your take on the same question, but just, you know, it's a natural segue to Jenny. How did you earn the trust of the family to give up something so sensitive?
I think from the very beginning, we were very careful about what we really want to do. And even at the early stage, basically building trust with the family, we didn't show up directly with a camera. We started as volunteers. And we actually helped them even during the trial, because the trial happened in Peoria, not in Champaign. So there were not like a big Chinese American community supporting the family. So actually it was Shilling and I, we drove the family around whenever they wanted to buy groceries. And sometimes they need to record testimony beforehand. We also drove them to the courthouse to meet the prosecutors. So we are doing, you know, things other than being filmmaker, documenting everything. In terms of like Ying's personal stuff, like her diaries, the first time we talked about, we mentioned that to the family was when during my trip in China in 2018. I talked to the boyfriend and just see, you know, if we can get a copy of the diary she kept in the US. And that he feel like, you know, that's something very personal. He didn't really, you know, say yes at the beginning. But later on, he went through the diary and make sure that there's no like sensitive stuff. And he took pictures of each pages and sent it to us. Mm-hmm. And in terms of the diary she kept in China before she came to the US, Ian's boyfriend and the family, they didn't feel comfortable to show the full diary to us, but they did ask, you know, what kind of diary entries we wanted and why we wanted those diary entries. And we gave them, you know, some explanation, and that's reasonable. So it was actually Ying's boyfriend. He chose specific diary entries. He feel like it's okay to share, and it probably would help the documentary. So he also took a picture of those diary entries and sent it to me. So I would say like every step, we want to make sure the family, they were comfortable with what they are going to give us, and they understand what we are going to do with all these materials.
Brent, your takeaway that you want people to think about?
Well, so when we were making this film, you know, we never imagined that, you know, when the film would be released, there would be this trade war with China, and that you know, our president and the GOP are saying these horribly racist, you know, things about Chinese and Asian Americans, and that, you know, there are hate crimes happening, kind of spiking against Asian Americans happening all over the country. So I think in some ways the message of the film is maybe more important than ever, that it's this humanizing story celebrating Yingying's life, celebrating her family's life, just this incredible family that would do anything for their daughter, these incredible people. And I do hope the film breaks some of these just terrible stereotypes about Asian Americans, about victims, about international students. I hope the film can do a lot of different things, but leaves the audience with this idea of, you know, Yingying just being this, you know, incredible, brilliant young woman with this incredible family. And I hope that's the end takeaway for an audience, and that's a relatable story, that they feel that empathy for the family.
Jenny, just maybe last word for you on a personal note. You started this as a student, and you're now looking ahead. What's next for a young star director like yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I found inspiration from my own life, my identity, and for me, like Ying's story, you know, it's also kind of like my own story. She was an international student, and she's a young female and chasing her dream in the U.S. And that's something, you know, I definitely still want to explore such kind of stories, such kind of topics. And recently I'm focusing on Chinese Americans' experience under the China-US tension, because like I'm a Chinese working here with a visa, a lot of issues actually affecting my own life. So that's something I want to explore. And I'm also exploring women's rights in China, these kind of topics.
Well, what a tremendous accomplishment the three of you have made, and we are also fortunate for the time you've invested in it, the trust that you earned, and the care you took in telling this story. And I think we're all better for it. So thank you so much. What an honor to be able to hear from all of you, and we'll be looking for many good things in your future.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark.
Thank you.
And thank you, Double Exposure.